The day had started with so much hope. The new mother, tired but filled with joy, carefully held her newborn in her arms as she was wheeled into the hospital. The little baby, wrapped snugly in a soft blanket, blinked with tiny, curious eyes, taking in the world for the first time. She had dreamed of this day for months, preparing herself to be the best mother she could be. Yet as soon as she entered the hospital, she felt something was off. The waiting area was bustling with nurses and patients, the usual mix of urgency and care. But there was an unmistakable coldness when she approached the reception desk. The nurse barely looked up, her expression tight, her words clipped. "Your paperwork," she said without a smile, tossing a clipboard toward the mother. She could sense the impatience, the subtle look of judgment, and it stung in a way she wasn't expecting. She was used to people underestimating her, but she had never imagined it would happen in a place meant for healing and care. Her baby stirred in her arms, and she instinctively adjusted the blanket, trying to shield the little one from the strange chill that seemed to hang in the air. She tried to speak to explain her concerns, but the nurse seemed uninterested, barely glancing at her. Every question she asked was met with short, almost dismissive answers. She felt invisible, like her presence was a nuisance rather than someone needing help. Despite the cold reception, she tried to stay calm. She reminded herself that she had worked hard to get through the pregnancy safely, and that she had every right to receive care for herself and her child. She was strong, resilient, and determined not to let anyone's attitude ruin the happiness she felt holding her newborn. But the weight of the staff's dismissal pressed down on her, and a quiet anxiety began to creep in. As she was finally guided to a room, the same pattern continued. The nurse who brought her in hardly looked at her, focusing instead on the chart in her hand, making notes without acknowledging the mother or the baby. The mother felt a mix of frustration and sadness. She had imagined that after the birth, the hospital staff would be kind, supportive, and attentive. Instead, she was met with cold professionalism that felt more like rejection than care. She placed her baby in the small hospital bassinet, carefully checking the tiny fingers and toes. The baby's soft cooing was a comfort, a reminder that despite the harshness around them, they had each other. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves, and rang the call button, hoping someone would come to help with the basic needs of post-delivery care. When the nurse arrived, the look on her face said everything. She seemed impatient, like the mother's request was a bother. The nurse answered her questions mechanically, without eye contact, without empathy. Each word, each gesture made the mother feel smaller, like she had done something wrong simply by needing help. Hours passed in a blur. The mother felt exhausted from the birth and the emotional strain of being treated as if she was unworthy of care. She noticed small things that others might not see. The nurses whispering to each other and glancing at her, the doctor's assistant avoiding her eyes, the subtle ways in which she was being sidelined. It wasn't outright hostility, but a quiet, cutting dismissal that made her question her place there. She felt a knot of anger in her stomach, but also a sense of disbelief. How could this happen in a hospital, a place meant for healing? Even as she tried to rest, her mind raced. She worried about her baby, about the care they would receive, about the attitude of the staff if any complications arose. She kept reminding herself to stay calm, to be polite, to ask questions clearly and firmly. She had learned over the years that patience was often the best tool when facing unfair treatment. But deep down, she also knew that patience alone wasn't enough. She deserved respect, and she deserved proper medical attention. Late in the afternoon, a small incident brought her feelings to the surface. She asked the nurse if the baby could have another blanket, as the room had turned chilly. The nurse's response was sharp and dismissive, almost mocking. "The baby has one blanket. You'll have to make do." The words hit her like a slap. She clenched her jaw, trying not to cry, holding the baby a little closer. The baby, oblivious to the tension, reached up with tiny hands as if sensing her mother's unease. She whispered softly to the baby, promising warmth, comfort, and love despite the coldness surrounding them. That night, as the hospital grew quieter and the hum of machines filled the room, the mother lay awake. She watched her baby sleep peacefully, the soft rise and fall of the tiny chest a reminder of what mattered most. She thought about the staff, their dismissive attitudes, and the inequality she had experienced. She wondered how many other new mothers had felt the same way. How many had silently suffered, too afraid to speak up or too overwhelmed to fight for the care they needed. The thought made her heart ache, but it also strengthened her resolve. In the early hours of the morning, a young nurse came in to check on her and her baby. There was a hint of warmth in the nurse's voice, a slight difference from the previous day's interactions. It was brief, almost imperceptible, but it gave the mother a glimmer of hope. She realized that despite the bias and dismissiveness, she had the power to advocate for herself and her child. She made a mental note to be persistent, to ask questions, and to demand the attention and care they both deserved. By mid-morning, the mother had gathered her strength. She spoke to a senior nurse, calmly but firmly explaining the situation and her concerns. The nurse listened, and though the air was still tense, there was a noticeable shift. Her persistence had started to break through the barrier of bias. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. She felt a renewed sense of determination, understanding that she could not control the prejudices of others, but she could control how she responded and how she protected her child. Throughout the day, the mother kept a careful balance of patience and assertiveness. She tended to her baby, fed her, changed her, and soothed her cries with gentle words and tender touches. Every moment was an act of love, an act of resilience. She realized that even in the face of indifference or prejudice, the bond she shared with her child was a source of strength that could not be taken away. As the sun set and the hospital lights glowed softly, she reflected on the experience so far. It had been a trial, an emotional challenge that tested her patience and courage. She understood that this was only the beginning of their journey, both in the hospital and in life as mother and child. But she also knew that she had faced something unjust and had not backed down. She had maintained her dignity, and she had shown care and love despite the coldness around her. The mother held her baby close, feeling the warmth and life in her tiny body. She whispered promises of love, protection, and fairness, vowing to always stand up for her child and herself. She realized that even though the hospital staff had underestimated her, they could not take away her strength, her compassion, or her resolve. And with that thought, she drifted into a light, careful sleep, her arms wrapped protectively around the most precious part of her world, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with courage and grace. The next day began with the same quiet tension that had settled over the hospital room the night before. The mother woke early, the soft light filtering through the blinds, casting long shadows across the room. Her baby stirred beside her, letting out small, gentle cries. She cradled the little one, feeling the warmth and fragile strength in her tiny body, reminding herself that her love and attention were the most important shields against the coldness of the world outside their bond. She had learned from yesterday that patience alone would not earn the care she deserved. She would have to be assertive, firm, and unafraid to ask for help when it was needed. As she called for a nurse, she noticed the same dismissive glance she had grown accustomed to, but she steadied herself, refusing to let frustration show. Her voice was calm but firm as she asked about the baby's checkup and the progress of her own recovery. The nurse's answers were short, clipped, and lacking warmth, but this time she stood her ground, repeating her questions when they were ignored and making it clear she would not leave without the information she needed. Throughout the morning, she noticed more of the subtle prejudices around her. A nurse commented under her breath, barely audible, about the mother not knowing how to care for her newborn properly. A doctor seemed to rush through the examination, barely giving her a moment to ask questions. Each small act of dismissal or condescension stung, yet she found strength in her baby's presence. She focused on the tiny hands, the soft skin, the gentle breathing. In those moments, nothing else mattered but their safety and well-being. She tried to engage with the staff politely, making small talk when appropriate, but she could sense that they saw her as unworthy of respect. The experience was exhausting, both physically and emotionally, but she refused to allow their attitudes to overshadow her joy of being with her newborn. She reminded herself repeatedly that she was a capable mother, that she understood her baby's needs, and that she had every right to insist on proper care. By midday, the strain of dealing with dismissive staff began to take its toll. Her back ached from sitting in an uncomfortable chair for hours, and she felt the lingering pain from childbirth as well. She attempted to get assistance for basic needs like water, food, and help adjusting the baby's position for feeding, but each request seemed like an inconvenience to the nurses. It was clear that they were not used to mothers demanding attention or asking questions about their own care. She took a deep breath and reminded herself not to let their prejudice shake her confidence. Her child's safety was the priority, and she would not allow their biases to prevent proper care. At one point, she noticed the baby becoming fussy, crying softly but persistently. She tried to soothe the little one, rocking and speaking gently, but she also needed guidance. When she asked the nurse for advice on feeding and soothing techniques, the nurse barely glanced up, speaking in a tone that suggested impatience. The mother repeated her question calmly, maintaining eye contact, insisting on clear answers. The nurse finally relented, giving brief instructions. The mother listened carefully, making sure to follow the guidance exactly, but she could not ignore the subtle condescension in every word. By the afternoon, the mother realized she needed more than just instructions. Her baby needed careful observation, and she needed reassurance that both of them were doing well. She approached the senior nurse, explaining her concerns about the baby's feeding and her own recovery. This time she made sure her voice was firm yet respectful, emphasizing the importance of proper care and attention. The senior nurse listened, her demeanor less dismissive, but there was still a hint of doubt in her eyes. The mother felt a mix of relief and continued frustration. She had made progress, but the underlying prejudice was still present. Throughout the day, she noticed other mothers being treated differently. Some received immediate attention, warmth in conversation, and extra guidance without having to ask. It was painful to see the contrast, but it strengthened her resolve to advocate for herself and her child. She realized that she could not rely on the kindness of staff alone. She had to be proactive. Each interaction became an opportunity to assert her rights, to demand respectful treatment, and to ensure that her baby's needs were met without compromise. In between these moments, she found small joys. She watched her baby discover their fingers and toes, respond to gentle tickles, and make soft cooing sounds. She laughed quietly at these little discoveries, feeling the bond between them deepen. Despite the challenges in the hospital, she found solace in the ordinary, beautiful moments of motherhood. Each smile, each tiny movement was a reminder of why she was fighting, why she would not allow prejudice to dictate the care they received. By late afternoon, she had managed to secure proper attention for the baby's checkup and her own recovery. The staff's demeanor remained inconsistent, but she had learned to navigate the challenges with calm persistence. She spoke to doctors, nurses, and assistants clearly and firmly, ensuring that every concern was addressed. She had grown more confident, realizing that her voice could demand respect even in an environment where she was initially dismissed. As evening approached, she reflected on the day's struggles. The hospital, meant to be a place of healing and support, had tested her patience, resilience, and courage. She understood that the prejudice she faced was not her fault, and that the biases of others could not diminish her worth or the love she felt for her child. She had learned to stand up for herself, to insist on care, and to remain composed despite the dismissive attitudes around her. She held her baby close as the night grew darker, whispering words of comfort and love. She promised warmth, safety, and protection, reinforcing the bond that had already strengthened through the day's trials. She understood that motherhood was not just about care, but about advocacy, strength, and unwavering commitment to the child's well-being. As she finally drifted into a light, restorative sleep, she felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. The day had been challenging, filled with moments of frustration, sadness, and quiet anger, but she had faced each one with courage. She knew that the road ahead would still have obstacles, but she felt prepared to navigate them, drawing strength from her bond with her newborn and her own determination to ensure their safety and happiness. The morning light filtered gently through the blinds, painting soft stripes across the hospital room. The mother woke with her baby nestled against her chest, the little one's breath warm and steady. She felt a quiet determination that today would be different. The previous days had tested her patience, but now she was prepared to face the challenges head-on, armed with a quiet strength she hadn't known she possessed. She carefully fed her baby, noting every movement, every tiny reaction. The baby seemed content, but the mother knew better than to assume everything was fine without proper care and attention. She had already faced dismissive staff and subtle prejudice, and she wasn't about to let it interfere with her child's well-being. She dressed the baby in clean clothes and made sure the blanket was warm, feeling a sense of control and responsibility that comforted her in the midst of uncertainty. When the nurse arrived for the morning check, the mother spoke calmly but firmly, asking detailed questions about the baby's health and her own recovery. At first, the nurse seemed inclined to brush her off, glancing at the chart without meeting her eyes. But the mother persisted, repeating her questions, clarifying concerns, and insisting on answers. Slowly, a subtle shift began to appear. The nurse, though still somewhat curt, began to acknowledge her presence, responding more fully to her inquiries. It was during this time that the first signs of recognition started to appear. The mother overheard a conversation between hospital staff, a whisper that carried an air of surprise. They had just discovered her true status, her family connections, her influence, and the respect she commanded outside these hospital walls. The sudden change in tone was palpable. Where there had been cold dismissal, now there was attention. Where there had been impatience, now there was careful listening. She noticed the way the nurse straightened. The doctor's eyes softened, and even the assistants moved more deliberately to attend to her and the baby. The mother felt a complex mix of emotions. There was relief, of course, that her concerns were now taken seriously. But there was also frustration, a simmering anger at the hypocrisy. Why had her worth been judged before it was known who she really was? She held her baby close, reflecting on the injustice while silently vowing that her presence would no longer be ignored, regardless of status. She had learned the hard way how easily prejudice could interfere with care, and she resolved that she would not allow it to happen again. Throughout the day, the difference in treatment was stark. The same questions that had been met with impatience now received thorough explanations. The staff who had ignored her seemed eager to prove their competence, perhaps out of fear of judgment or perhaps out of genuine acknowledgement of her importance. The mother navigated this sudden change with quiet dignity, never letting her reactions betray the lingering resentment. She focused instead on her baby, taking notes on feeding, observing responses, and ensuring that every need was met promptly and fully. She realized how much energy she had spent previously on patience and restraint, and now she had to adjust to the abrupt shift in behavior. She noted the subtle smiles, the careful attention, and the willingness to answer questions fully. She stayed polite and calm, understanding that while the attention was necessary, it did not erase the earlier neglect. She kept her focus firmly on the health and comfort of her child. During a routine check, the doctor explained the baby's progress, offering detailed advice and instructions. The mother listened carefully, asking clarifying questions and taking careful mental notes. She felt a sense of empowerment in the knowledge that she now commanded attention and respect. It was a strange feeling to be suddenly acknowledged after days of dismissal, and it highlighted the unfairness of the prior treatment. She reminded herself to stay grounded, to keep her emotions in check, and to continue advocating for her baby's needs. As the afternoon passed, other hospital staff began to interact differently as well. A nurse who had previously been curt and dismissive now offered gentle advice on swaddling techniques, speaking with a warmth that had been absent before. The assistants who had avoided eye contact now engaged in conversation, explaining procedures with patience and care. The mother noted these changes, aware that they were a result of her status, yet she accepted the improved treatment for the sake of her baby. She also reflected on the lessons learned. The stark contrast in behavior had shown her the depth of bias that existed and how easily assumptions could affect care. She thought about other mothers who might not have the means, the connections, or the confidence to demand respect, and her heart went out to them. She felt a quiet sense of responsibility to use her voice and influence to highlight these inequalities, even if it was simply through her conduct and insistence on proper care. The evening brought a moment of quiet bonding. She held her baby close, speaking softly, singing lullabies and feeling the steady rhythm of the little heartbeat. Despite the day's revelations, the joy of motherhood remained the central focus. She realized that, while the attention from the staff was important, it was the love, care, and attentiveness she provided that truly mattered. She had been tested, dismissed, and now acknowledged, but the core of her strength came from within. She reflected on her own resilience, the way she had navigated the dismissive behavior, and how she had stood firm in the face of prejudice. She understood that the recognition she now received did not define her value. It merely highlighted the unfair assumptions of others. The mother made a silent promise to herself that she would always remember the lessons of these days, to advocate for herself and others, and to never let bias dictate the quality of care she or her child received. As the night settled over the hospital, she felt a sense of cautious satisfaction. She had faced an environment of dismissal and prejudice and had emerged stronger, more assertive, and more aware of the challenges that existed. The baby slept peacefully, a reminder of the life she was nurturing and protecting. She felt a quiet gratitude for their bond, for the strength they shared, and for the clarity she had gained through the trials of the day. She knew that the coming days would still bring challenges, but she also knew she was prepared. She had learned how to assert herself, how to demand proper care, and how to navigate the subtle biases that could arise. Most importantly, she had reinforced her own sense of worth and her commitment to her child's well-being. With that thought, she closed her eyes, letting herself rest while holding the most precious part of her life close, ready to face whatever came next with courage, patience, and unwavering love. The morning sun streamed through the hospital blinds, casting warm streaks of light across the room. The mother woke with a deep sense of awareness, knowing that today, like the days before, would be full of challenges but also opportunities. She gently lifted her baby, feeling the soft weight in her arms and the steady heartbeat that reminded her of the precious life she was nurturing. The events of the past days had left a mark on her spirit, teaching her about patience, perseverance, and the quiet strength she possessed. She carefully fed the baby, noting each tiny movement and reaction. The baby's small fingers grasped at her hand instinctively, a reminder that this bond was their safe place amidst the uncertain world outside. As she finished feeding, she wrapped the baby in a soft blanket, the familiar act of swaddling bringing comfort to both of them. She glanced around the room, taking in the polished floors, the gentle hum of machines, and the quiet conversations of the staff. Everything seemed more organized, more attentive, yet she could not shake the memory of how they had treated her before learning her status. When the nurse arrived for the morning check, the mother asked her questions calmly but firmly, determined to maintain the advocacy she had built over the past days. The nurse, now aware of her identity and influence, responded more thoroughly, explaining procedures and answering questions with patience. The mother listened carefully, asking for clarifications when necessary, and felt a mix of relief and lingering frustration. Relief that her concerns were finally being addressed properly. Frustration that it had taken her perceived status to earn such attention. She held the baby close, feeling the tiny heart beat against her chest, a grounding presence that reminded her of her purpose. Throughout the morning, she observed the staff more closely. Their behavior had shifted dramatically, and she noticed the polite smiles, careful instructions, and attentive care that had been absent before. Despite the improved treatment, she remained cautious, aware that respect had not been freely given. It had been granted because of who she was, rather than because of the care she deserved. This realization sparked a quiet determination within her. She knew that she wanted to share her experience, to expose the unequal treatment and advocate for fairness for all mothers, not just those with influence. As the day progressed, the mother became more proactive. She asked for detailed information on her baby's feeding patterns, sleeping habits, and any necessary medications. She ensured that her own recovery was also addressed, speaking clearly about her needs and the care required for her physical healing. The staff responded diligently, explaining procedures, showing techniques, and offering guidance she had previously been denied. Each answer and act of care reminded her of the responsibility she carried, not only to her child but also to herself, to insist on proper treatment and dignity. Midway through the morning, the mother decided to document her experiences. She pulled out a small notebook and quietly wrote down the interactions she had witnessed, the disparities in treatment, and her thoughts about the staff's behavior before and after discovering her status. Writing gave her clarity and a sense of purpose. It allowed her to organize her thoughts and emotions, turning her frustration into a constructive record that could serve as a testament to the challenges she had faced. She felt empowered, knowing that her words might one day help others who were subjected to similar bias. While she wrote, the baby dozed peacefully, their tiny chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. She watched the soft flutter of eyelashes, the gentle movements of little hands, and the occasional stretch of tiny legs. Each small gesture filled her with a deep sense of love and responsibility. She whispered softly to the baby, promising safety, warmth, and unwavering care, reinforcing the bond that had grown even stronger through these days of trials and learning. By the afternoon, the mother felt a renewed sense of confidence. She approached the senior nurse to discuss concerns about feeding and sleeping routines. This time, the conversation was entirely different from the dismissive exchanges of the past. The nurse listened attentively, providing clear guidance and advice. The mother took notes, asked questions, and ensured that both she and her baby understood every detail. She recognized the shift in the staff's attitude, but instead of taking it personally, she focused on the practical outcomes, her child's health and her own recovery. During the day, she reflected on the unfairness of the earlier treatment. She thought about the other mothers who might not have influence or recognition, who might endure neglect or bias silently. Her heart went out to them, and she made a quiet promise to herself to advocate for equality and fairness, using her own experience as a platform to raise awareness. She understood that while her status had changed the way she was treated, the core problem remained. Bias could undermine care for anyone, and it was up to people to challenge it. In the late afternoon, the mother took time to bond with her baby in a quiet moment, away from the bustle of the hospital. She sang soft lullabies, feeling the warmth of their connection and the trust that had grown over these past days. She reflected on the journey so far, the challenges, the dismissals, and the eventual recognition, and realized how much it had strengthened her resolve. She knew that motherhood was not only about caring for the child, but also about standing firm, asserting rights and protecting the dignity of both herself and her baby. As evening approached, the mother found herself engaged in conversation with a nurse about broader issues of care and patient experience. She shared her observations politely, highlighting how bias could affect treatment and emphasizing the importance of listening to every mother's concerns. The nurse responded thoughtfully, acknowledging the validity of her points and expressing a willingness to consider changes in practice. The mother felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that her voice could influence change, even in small ways. Throughout the night, she remained vigilant, checking on her baby, adjusting blankets, and ensuring comfort. Each tiny movement of the baby reminded her of her responsibilities and the strength she possessed. Despite the challenges of the past days, she felt empowered by her ability to navigate the hospital environment, to advocate effectively, and to maintain calm and composure under pressure. She reflected on her growth and resilience. The initial prejudice and dismissive behavior had tested her in ways she had never anticipated. Yet she had emerged stronger, more assertive, and more aware of the inequalities that existed in care. She had learned how to demand attention and respect without aggression, to advocate for herself and her child, and to navigate the subtle biases that could appear in any environment. Most importantly, she had reinforced the unbreakable bond with her baby, a bond built on love, protection, and unwavering attention. As the hospital grew quiet, she held her baby close, feeling the steady rhythm of the little heartbeat against her chest. She whispered promises of love and safety, knowing that while the world could be unfair, she had the power to protect and nurture her child. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the lessons learned, for the resilience she had discovered, and for the growing awareness of how to challenge inequality. The night closed gently around them, a moment of peace after days of struggle, as the mother prepared herself for the next chapter with quiet strength and unwavering determination. The morning light filtered gently through the hospital room as the mother woke, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and quiet determination. The past days had been filled with challenges, disappointment, and moments of frustration, yet each day had strengthened her resolve. She looked down at her baby, who slept peacefully in the soft blanket she had wrapped them in. The tiny fingers curled gently around her own, a reminder of the precious life she was committed to protecting and nurturing. Today, she felt a sense of purpose beyond her own needs. She was determined not just to care for her child, but to ensure that her experience would have a wider impact. She thought of the mothers who might not have the confidence, support, or influence to demand the care they deserved. Her own journey had shown her both the depths of prejudice and the importance of standing firm. She vowed to use her voice to highlight the unfairness she had faced and to advocate for better treatment for all. She began her morning routine by feeding and comforting the baby, speaking softly and gently. Each small gesture reinforced the bond between them, providing reassurance and stability. As she tended to her child, she reflected on the way the hospital staff had treated her before and after discovering her status. The stark contrast remained a source of both frustration and insight. She understood now more than ever that bias could affect care in subtle yet significant ways. Throughout the morning, she continued to engage with the hospital staff proactively. She asked detailed questions about feeding schedules, vaccinations, and the baby's overall health. She also sought guidance for her own recovery, ensuring that she had the support and information she needed. The staff, now aware of her influence and recognition, responded thoroughly and attentively. While she appreciated the care, she remained mindful of the disparity in how she had been treated before, understanding that the lessons of these experiences could serve a greater purpose. By midday, she decided it was time to speak up more broadly. She requested to meet with the hospital's patient advocate, explaining her experiences in detail. She described the dismissive attitudes she had encountered, the subtle prejudices that had affected her care, and the sudden change in treatment once her status was known. She emphasized the importance of equitable care for all patients, highlighting how bias could create unnecessary stress and risk. The patient advocate listened carefully, taking notes and acknowledging the validity of her concerns. The mother felt a sense of empowerment, realizing that her voice could contribute to meaningful change. After the meeting, she returned to her room to rest briefly while the baby napped. She reflected on how far she had come, from feeling dismissed and undervalued to being listened to and respected. The experience had taught her resilience, the importance of self-advocacy, and the power of observation. She had learned to navigate a system that was not always fair, and to demand the care that she and her child deserved. In the afternoon, she took the opportunity to share her story with other mothers in the maternity ward. She spoke quietly but clearly, describing the challenges she had faced and offering guidance on how to assert their needs and advocate for themselves. Her words were met with gratitude and understanding, as many mothers shared similar experiences of feeling overlooked or dismissed. She felt a deep sense of connection and purpose, realizing that her journey could help others feel empowered and supported. Later in the day, a senior doctor came to check on the baby and the mother's recovery. The conversation was thorough and attentive, with detailed explanations and guidance. The mother asked questions confidently, ensuring she understood every aspect of care and recovery. She took careful notes and observed the baby's responses closely. Each interaction reinforced her sense of agency and the importance of being an active participant in her child's care. As evening approached, she reflected on the broader implications of her experience. She considered the impact of systemic bias in healthcare, the subtle ways assumptions could affect treatment, and the importance of advocacy. She knew that sharing her story, both in the hospital and more widely, could raise awareness and encourage change. She felt a renewed commitment to fairness, equality, and the empowerment of mothers everywhere. She spent the evening bonding with her baby, holding them close and speaking softly. She watched the tiny movements, the flutter of lashes, the gentle stretch of limbs, and felt a profound sense of love and responsibility. Each small gesture reminded her of the importance of presence, attentiveness, and care. She whispered promises of protection and guidance, reinforcing the security and comfort that every child deserved. As night fell, the hospital quieted. The mother held her baby close, feeling the warmth and steady heartbeat against her chest. She reflected on the journey, the initial dismissal, the struggle for respect, the eventual recognition, and the lessons learned along the way. She understood that while her status had brought attention, the true strength came from her resilience, her commitment, and her unwavering care for her child. In the stillness of the night, she considered the future. She knew that challenges would arise, both for herself and for other mothers navigating healthcare systems. Yet she felt empowered, knowing that her voice could advocate for change and that her experience could inspire others to stand firm. She understood the importance of sharing her story, not as a complaint, but as a testament to the strength, courage, and determination required to ensure equitable care. Finally, she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection and gratitude. She acknowledged her own strength, the bond with her child, and the potential for her experience to contribute to a broader understanding of fairness and respect in healthcare. She felt a sense of closure, knowing that she had faced prejudice, advocated for herself and her child, and emerged stronger and more aware. With her baby nestled safely in her arms, she drifted into sleep, carrying with her a sense of peace, purpose, and resolve. She knew that the days ahead would continue to bring challenges and learning opportunities, but she was ready. Her journey had strengthened her, Her love had guided her, and her determination had ensured that both she and her child were cared for with dignity and respect. In that quiet night, she felt the quiet power of motherhood, love, resilience, and the unwavering commitment to stand up for what was right, no matter the obstacles. The days following the mother's discharge from the hospital brought a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and new responsibilities. At home, the mother settled into a routine that centered entirely around the baby. Every moment was filled with careful attention, from feeding schedules to diaper changes, gentle rocking, and quiet conversations. Each day was a learning experience, and though the nights were long and the challenges constant, she felt a deep sense of purpose and fulfillment. She often reflected on her time in the hospital, the way the staff had initially dismissed her, and the sudden change in behavior once her true status was recognized. Those memories were vivid, sometimes bringing a pang of anger, but they also reminded her of the strength she had discovered within herself. She realized that her ability to stay calm, assertive, and focused under pressure had not only ensured proper care for her child, but had also taught her valuable lessons about resilience, advocacy, and the importance of self-worth. During the day, she took careful notes about her observations in the hospital. She documented interactions, inconsistencies in treatment, and moments when bias had clearly influenced the level of attention given to her and her baby. Writing served as a therapeutic exercise, helping her process the emotions she had felt and channeling them into a constructive narrative. She wanted to ensure that her experience could be shared in a way that highlighted the realities of discrimination in healthcare, while also showing the importance of standing up for oneself. Occasionally, she reached out to other new mothers in her community, sharing advice and tips about caring for newborns, as well as strategies for advocating effectively in healthcare settings. These conversations were empowering, both for her and for the mothers she spoke with. She could sense the relief and gratitude in their voices, knowing that her experience offered guidance and reassurance. It reminded her that her struggles had a purpose beyond her own family and that she could help others navigate similar challenges. As she cared for her baby, she also paid close attention to her own recovery. She followed her postnatal care plan meticulously, ensuring that she got enough rest, nourishment, and support. She recognized that taking care of herself was just as important as caring for her child, and she made deliberate choices to prioritize both. Each day she felt stronger, more confident, and more capable of managing the demands of motherhood. The mother also reflected on the moments of kindness she had witnessed in the hospital. Despite the bias she faced, there were staff members who treated her and her baby with genuine care. Those moments, though brief, reminded her that humanity existed even within imperfect systems. She held on to these memories as a source of hope, understanding that empathy and compassion could make a real difference in people's lives. In the evening, she created small rituals with her baby, reading stories, singing gentle songs, and talking softly about the world around them. These moments were not only comforting for the baby, but also grounding for her. They reinforced the bond between them and reminded her of the beauty in everyday life. She cherished these quiet times, recognizing that they were the foundation of a nurturing and loving environment. She also began planning ways to share her hospital experience more broadly. She considered writing an article, speaking at community gatherings, or even collaborating with local healthcare advocates to raise awareness about discrimination and the importance of equitable care. Her goal was to turn a painful experience into a catalyst for positive change, ensuring that other mothers would not face the same challenges alone. The thought of making a difference motivated her, giving purpose to the struggles she had endured. As weeks passed, she noticed her confidence growing. She was able to navigate appointments, ask questions with clarity, and advocate for her baby with calm assurance. Her ability to communicate effectively with healthcare professionals had improved, and she felt empowered to demand the care and attention her child deserved. The memory of the hospital staff's initial dismissiveness remained a reminder, fueling her determination to protect her child and stand up for fairness. The mother also found time to reflect on her own personal growth. She realized that the experience had strengthened her patience, resilience, and empathy. She had learned to remain composed under pressure, to recognize injustice without being overwhelmed by it, and to find strength in the bond with her child. These lessons extended beyond motherhood, shaping her perspective on life and her interactions with others. Throughout this period, she remained deeply attentive to her baby's needs. She observed developmental milestones with joy and wonder, celebrating each small achievement. The first smile, the gentle cooing, the slight lift of a tiny head. These moments filled her with pride and reinforced the importance of her care and attention. She understood that every gesture, every interaction, was a building block in the baby's sense of security, trust, and love. She also maintained a network of support, reaching out to friends, family, and community resources when needed. She understood that seeking help was not a sign of weakness, but a vital part of raising a healthy, happy child. This awareness helped her navigate the challenges of early motherhood more effectively and gave her the confidence to face unexpected difficulties with resilience. One evening, as she sat quietly rocking her baby, she reflected on the entire journey, from the initial moments of dismissal in the hospital to the present day filled with growth, learning, and bonding. She recognized the power of advocacy, the importance of persistence, and the value of standing firm in the face of bias. She felt a profound sense of gratitude for the lessons learned, the strength discovered, and the love that had deepened between her and her child. She knew that the journey of motherhood was ongoing, filled with new experiences, challenges, and joys. Yet she also knew that she was better prepared than ever to face these moments with confidence, compassion, and resilience. The experience had shaped her not just as a mother, but as an advocate for fairness and as a witness to the importance of empathy and care in every aspect of life. As the night grew quiet and the baby drifted into peaceful sleep, she held the little one close, feeling the warmth, love, and connection that defined their bond. She whispered softly, promising protection, guidance, and unwavering support. In that stillness, she felt a sense of purpose and empowerment, knowing that the challenges faced and the lessons learned had prepared her to navigate motherhood with strength, grace, and unwavering dedication. The mother closed her eyes briefly, letting the moment sink in. She understood that while the world could be unjust and the road sometimes difficult, the love she shared with her child, the resilience she had discovered within herself, and the lessons she had learned would carry them both through any challenge. And as she drifted into a calm, restorative sleep, she felt a quiet certainty that the journey ahead, though unpredictable, would be filled with love, growth, and unwavering determination to ensure the best for her child and for others who might face similar trials.